My fingers traced the faded ink on that notice pinned to the old board by the river road. Room for rent in quiet cottage. No fuss, no drama. I hadn't pinned it expecting anything more than a paycheck, but as I stood there, the words pulled at something deeper. Hidden longings I'd buried under stacks of unfinished pages. Out here in this rural stretch, the isolation wrapped around me like fog, thick, unyielding. I needed the income, sure, but without intrusion, without anyone cracking open the silence I'd built my life around. Gravel crunched under tires then, kicking up dust that hung in the air like my unspoken fears. I turned as the door creaked open behind me, revealing her silhouette against the dim porch light. The property sat tucked against the river's edge, weathered boards of the cottage leaning into the silt banks like they were holding secrets of their own. The water moved slow there, murky with sediment that mirrored the guarded corners of my heart, layers built up over years, never quite letting the light through. I'd chosen this spot for its seclusion, far from the city's hum, where I could write without eyes on me. But lately, the quiet had turned heavy, pressing in during the long afternoons when the sun slanted through the pines. My days blurred into isolation. I'd fill pages with half-formed stories, words about women chasing shadows of themselves, only to crumple them by evening. The silence settled then, thick as the chill off the water, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. I'd sit by the window, coffee growing cold in my hands, watching the river carve its path. It was peaceful, or so I told myself. But nights came with that ache, the kind that whispers you're alone not by choice but by habit. Bills started stacking up like unshared secrets. Electric, supplies for the cabin, the slow drain of living out here without a steady gig. My savings dwindled, and the thought of renting out the guest cottage gnawed at me. I didn't want strangers poking around my space, unraveling the fragile routine I'd carved. But necessity won out, reluctant as it was. I pinned the notice one gray morning, fingers numb from the damp air, hoping for someone quiet, someone who wouldn't demand more than the walls could give. That's when she arrived. Tires crunched up the drive again, slower this time, and I watched from the kitchen window as a truck pulled in. She stepped out, suitcase in one hand, a guitar case slung over her shoulder. Flannel shirt tucked into worn jeans, her hair tied back loose, catching the wind. Her eyes scanned the place with quiet caution, taking in the cottage, the river, me standing in the doorway. Not rushed, not flashy, just steady, like she'd seen too many roads to be surprised by much. I met her on the porch. The air hung thick with river dampness, that earthy scent clinging to everything. "You're here for the rental?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. She nodded, setting the suitcase down. "Clara, saw your notice in town. This the place?" "Yeah, Lena." I gestured to the cottage path. "It's basic. River view, your own entrance. Rent's due first of the month." Her gaze flicked to the water, then back. "Looks peaceful. That's what I need." We kept it brief. Keys, the lock code, where the well water came from. No prying, no story swapped. She had that traveler's reserve. Calluses on her hands from the road, I figured. As she headed to unpack, I felt a shift in the air. Subtle, but there. The quiet wasn't quite as absolute anymore. That first night, I lay in bed with the window cracked, the river murmuring outside. Then it came. Faint guitar strings floating through the walls. Soft plucks weaving into the dark. Not loud, just enough to stir the silence. My heart thudded once, hard, against my ribs. Company, even this distant, felt foreign. I listened until the notes faded, wondering what kind of songs she carried. The next evening, I found myself at the stove, stirring a pot of soup from whatever vegetables lingered in the garden. The scent of onions and herbs filled the main house, cutting through the damp chill that seeped in after sunset. I hadn't planned to invite her, but when I saw her walking back from the river with a handful of wild berries, dark and glistening, something shifted. "Pick these along the bank," she said, holding them out as she stepped onto the porch. "Thought you might use them." I hesitated, then nodded. "Come in, soup's almost ready, unless you're set on eating alone." She paused, wiping her hands on her jeans, then followed. We sat at the scarred wooden table, bowls steaming between us. The berries sat in a small bowl, untouched for now, like a quiet offering. Conversation started light, skirting the edges of anything personal. The weather, mostly. How the river rose after rains, turning the silt to mud that clung to boots. She ate slowly, spoon scraping the bowl, her eyes on the window where the light faded to gray. I watched her hands as she reached for the salt. Calloused, rough from strings or steering wheels, I couldn't tell yet. They moved with a careful grace, fingers long and steady. When she laughed, a short, unexpected sound at something I said about the persistent damp, it cut through the evening chill like a warm blade. Low and genuine, it lingered in the air, pulling at the corners of my mouth despite myself. "You're from around here?" she asked, tilting her head. "Born in the city," I replied, keeping it vague. "Needed quieter." "You?" "Traveling through." She shrugged, gaze dropping to her bowl. "Been on the road a while, seen places from coast to mountains." Keeps things moving. No details on why she wandered, just that hint of something beneath. Her voice softened on the word mountains, like it carried weight she wasn't ready to unpack. I let it hang, stirring my soup instead. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it pressed, full of unsaid things. We finished eating, the berries finally sampled, tart, bursting on the tongue. She thanked me quietly, then stood to leave. "Need help with the wood?" she offered as she rinsed her bowl. "Saw the stack out back. Looks like it could use another pair of hands." I agreed, more out of surprise than need. Outside, the air cooled fast, fading light casting long shadows across the yard. We worked side by side, splitting logs with the old axe, the thud echoing off the river. Her shoulder brushed mine once, accidental in the tight space by the pile. Warm through the flannel, solid. I felt it linger, a spark against the chill. She didn't pull away quick, just kept swinging, her breath steady. By the time we finished, dusk had settled, the stack neater, our hands dusted with bark and grit. "Thanks," I said, flexing my fingers. "Makes it easier." She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "No trouble. Night's coming on anyway." She headed back to the cottage, guitar case in hand again. I watched her go, the door clicking shut behind her. Inside, I cleared the table, the berry bowl empty now. The house felt less empty, though. Rare company, even this brief, stirred something. I climbed the stairs to my room, the floorboards creaking underfoot. That night, lying in bed, the guitar started up again. Fainter through the walls, a melody that twisted slow and low. My heart thudded against my ribs, once, twice, like it recognized the rhythm. Thoughts circled. Her laugh, the brush of shoulder, the way she'd offered those berries without asking. It wasn't much, but out here, it felt like enough to crack the silence. I didn't know what I wanted from it, just that the quiet had changed shape. Days started to blend after that, a routine forming around unspoken rhythms. Mornings, I'd hear her moving in the cottage, the soft strum waking the air before the sun crested the trees. Afternoons brought shared glances over the fence, nods as she walked the river path. Evenings, sometimes we'd cross paths at the woodpile or the well, words exchanged like careful steps. Nothing rushed, nothing named. But the pull was there, steady as the current below. Mornings took on a new shape after that. I brew coffee in the main house, the pot hissing on the stove, steam rising thick with the scent of dark roast and earth. I'd carry a mug out to the porch, settling into the old rocker that creaked under my weight. The river stretched below, its surface catching the first light, silt swirling, lazy, in the current. Clara would appear soon after, stepping from the cottage with her own cup, steam curling around her face. We'd sit there, not always speaking at first, just the sip of hot liquid and the distant rush of water filling the space. One morning, she broke the quiet. "You write out here?" Her voice carried easy, like she'd been turning the question over. I nodded, mug warm against my palms. "Try to. Stories mostly. About people finding their way back to themselves." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Sounds heavy. What's the latest one about? I hesitated. Sharing felt risky, like handing over a piece of skin. But her eyes held steady, no judgment, just curiosity. A woman leaving the city for something real, chasing echoes of old loves. Clara's laugh came soft, cutting the chill. We all chase echoes, don't we? She shared a bit then, a story from the road. Nights in dusty bars, fingers aching on guitar strings after long drives. Nothing deep, just threads, fragile as spider silk in the breeze. I listened, the words weaving into me, pulling at the guarded parts. Her voice had that raw edge, like gravel under tires, but warm underneath. Those porch talks deepened over days. Stories traded back and forth, careful at first, then looser. She'd talk of mountains she'd crossed, the way snow clung to pines like forgotten promises. I'd counter with city fragments, neon lights blurring faces in crowds, the ache of hiding who you were. Not all of it, never the core, but enough to feel the threads tighten, binding us in the morning light. Still, my guard stayed up. Clara's warmth came too easy, her smiles lingering a beat too long when our eyes met. I'd catch myself wondering, was it just friendliness, the kind travelers offer to fill the empty? Or something more? Signals I might misread in this isolation. My heart would thud then, a dull hammer against ribs, fear twisting in. I'd loved women before, in shadows, quick and quiet to avoid the stares. Out here, with her, the pull felt sharper, more dangerous. What if I saw what wasn't there? What if I shattered the fragile piece? One afternoon I tested it. I'd been wrestling a draft all morning, words spilling uneven on the page. A woman by a river, yearning for touch she couldn't name. The cabin felt too small, air thick with unsaid things. I folded the pages, stepped out to find Clara splitting wood again, axe rising and falling steady. Sweat beaded on her neck. Flannel sleeves rolled to elbows, revealing forearms corded from the work. "Clara!" I called, voice steadier than my pulse. "Got a minute?" She paused, wiping her brow with the back of her hand, grit streaking her skin. "Sure, what's up?" I held out the pages, fingers tight around them. Wrote this. Mind reading? Telling me if it lands? Her eyes flicked to the paper, then back to me, a flicker of surprise. She set the axe aside, took the draft with care, like it might crumble. "Yeah, I'd like that." We moved to the porch steps, sitting close enough that her knee nearly brushed mine. She read in silence, the river's rush the only sound, echoing the tension building in my chest. Pages turned slow, her lips moving slightly, absorbing. When she finished, she looked up, gaze intense. "It's good, Lena. Raw. That part about the touch, the way it hesitates like it's afraid to be real, hits hard." Her words stirred something deep, a warmth spreading from my core, unexpected. I met her eyes, closer now, the air between us charged. "Thanks. Means something, hearing that." She nodded, handing the pages back, her fingers grazing line. Lingered a second too long. Electric. My breath caught, heart slamming. For a moment the world narrowed, her callous tips against my skin, the scent of pine and sweat off her. I leaned in, just a fraction, testing. Then she pulled back, stood quick, folding her arms. "Better get back to the wood. Storm's coming. Maybe." Her voice clipped, eyes dropping to the river. The silence settled heavy after that, thick as the clouds gathering overhead. I watched her go, axe in hand again, swings harder now, echoing off the water. My cheeks burned, not from the sun. Misread. Had to be. The draft felt foolish in my pocket, words too exposed. Inside, I paced the cabin, the floorboards groaning underfoot. Why had I pushed? The guard snapped back up, tighter, ribs aching from the thud of regret. Days blurred with that weight. Chores became our buffer, hauling water from the well, hands slick and cold, scrubbing the porch, grit embedding under nails like stubborn doubts. The river's rush grew louder in my ears, mirroring the tension coiling inside, relentless. We'd work side by side, words sparse, her laugh absent now. But the proximity pulled still, shoulders brushing accidental in the narrow yard, sending jolts I ignored. One evening, as the light dipped low, I caught her by the fence. Walk? The word slipped out, unbidden. She paused, guitar slung over her back. Yeah, river path? We fell into step. Twilight wrapping around us. Words hanging unfinished in the air. The silt banks loomed dark, the current whispering secrets we weren't ready to voice. The walk along the river path stretched longer than I'd planned. Twilight deepened, the air cooling with each step, leaves rustling overhead like hesitant breaths. Clara walked beside me, guitar case bumping lightly against her hip. We didn't speak at first, just the crunch of gravel under boots and the river's low murmur filling the gaps. But the unfinished words from earlier hung there, pulling us closer without touch. She stopped by a bend where the silt banks rose steep, water lapping dark at the edges. Mind if I play a bit? Her voice came soft, almost testing. I nodded, settling on a fallen log, the damp wood seeping through my jeans. She unslung the guitar, fingers finding strings with familiar ease. The first notes came tentative, a fragment of melody twisting, slow, raw, like an exposed nerve under skin. Her voice joined in, low and gravel-edged, singing of roads that led nowhere, hearts chasing lights they couldn't hold. The words weren't polished, just pieces, love glimpsed in rearview mirrors, fading fast. But they cut deep, echoing the ache I'd felt on those city nights, alone in crowds. I watched her, the way her eyes closed briefly, throat working with each note. The proximity grew in that moment, emotional walls thinning under the music. When she trailed off, strings humming quiet, the silence felt fuller, charged. That's powerful, I said, my voice barely above the water. Where'd it come from? She strummed once more, gaze on the river. Life, I guess. Places I've been, people I've left behind. Her fingers stilled. You ever write something that scares you? Like it's too true? The question hung, inviting. I shifted on the log, bark rough against my palms. All the time. Back in the city, I buried parts of myself. Loved women there, in shadows. Quick meetings in dim bars, hands careful not to linger. Never real, not out in the open. Came here seeking something solid, authentic. The words slipped out, a hint of confession, my past loves surfacing like silt stirred from the bottom. I didn't name it all, but the weight lifted a fraction, shared in the dim light. Clara's eyes met mine, steady, a flicker of understanding. Shadows get long out here too. But yeah, seeking real. That's the pull. She packed the guitar away, standing close now, our shoulders nearly touching in the narrowing path. The air thickened, proximity wrapping around us like the evening mist rising off the water. We turned back as clouds gathered, the sky bruising purple. Rain started light at first, fat drops pattering leaves, then harder, drumming insistent. Run for it? I laughed, half serious, but she grabbed my hand instead, quick, instinctive, to pull me under a thicker canopy of pines. Her palm was warm, calluses rough against my skin, grip firm. Water soaked through my shirt, cold rivulets down my back, but her touch burned hotter. We stopped under the branches, breathing fast, rain sheeting around us like a curtain. I didn't let go right away. My thumb brushed her knuckles, a misstep in the downpour, testing the spark. Her eyes widened, breath catching, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that contact. Wet flannel clinging, the scent of rain and earth mixing with her warmth. Hope flared, sharp in my chest. Then she withdrew. Hand slipping free, slow but deliberate, she stepped back into the rain. Better head in, she murmured, voice tight, eyes dropping to the ground. Night. I stood there, rain blurring my vision, as she hurried toward the cottage, silhouette fading into the storm. The path felt longer alone, mud sucking at my boots, heart pounding not from the run. Inside the main house, I peeled off wet clothes, towel rough against chilled skin, but the cold settled deeper, in my gut. Misstep. Again. Why did I push? The guard I'd lowered snapped back, ribs aching with the thud of doubt. That night, sleep evaded me. I lay staring at the ceiling beams, shadows dancing from the wind-rattling windows. What ifs crowded in? What if her warmth was just kindness, travelers fleeting? What if I imagined the pull, projecting my own buried wants onto her easy laugh, those shared mornings? My desires questioned themselves, twisting like the river in flood. I'd hidden so long, loving in silence, fearing the whispers that followed. Out here, with Clara, it felt close to breaking free. But the withdrawal stung, a reminder of walls rebuilt. Days passed in that haze, rain relentless, turning the yard to muck. I'd catch glimpses of her through the window, head bent over the guitar in the cottage, or walking the path alone, flannel dark with damp. No porch coffees, no wood splitting side by side. The distance grew, emotional as the storm. My reflections looping. Was the handhold pity, friendship, or fear mirroring my own? Nights filled with more what-ifs, heart thudding awake in the dark, questioning every brush of eyes before the rain. The small town beyond the property whispered in my mind too, echoes of real lives I'd known. Women like me, hiding parts in church basements or back road drives, identities tucked away from prying eyes. Clara's travels hinted at that, wandering to escape judgments, perhaps, or to breathe without labels. I wondered if she carried the same weight, concealing under that quiet caution. The thought echoed my own guarded path, a subtle mirror in the isolation, making the fail cycle sharper. Why risk the reveal when silence felt safer? The storm raged on, wind howling through cracks, river swelling with silt-choked fury. Power flickered, once, twice, then out, leaving the house in thick black. I lit candles, flames guttering on the table, shadows long across the walls. Thunder rolled close, shaking the foundations, and I paced, the chill seeping deeper without heat. A knock came then, hesitant through the roar. Clara at the door, soaked again, lantern in hand from the cottage. "Power's out there too," she said, water dripping from her hair. "Mind if I waited out here? Safer together." I stepped aside, the door creaking wide. The main house felt smaller with her in it, rain lashing windows, forcing us close by the fire I'd coaxed in the hearth. Flames crackled, casting warm light on her face, drying her clothes slow. No words at first, just the storm's fury outside, drawing us into tighter quarters, unspoken rhythms shifting once more. The fire popped in the hearth, flames licking logs with steady hunger. Rain hammered the roof, a relentless drum that sealed us in this pocket of warmth. Clara sat cross-legged on the rug, closer than before, her knees nearly touching mine. The lantern she'd brought cast flickering shadows across her face, highlighting the damp strands of hair clinging to her neck. We didn't speak right away. The storm did that for us. Wind rattling panes like impatient fingers. I poked at the fire, sparks rising sharp, mirroring the tension coiling in my gut. She shifted, pulling her flannel tighter around her shoulders. "This place holds up better than most I've crashed in." Her voice cut soft through the roar, eyes on the blaze. I nodded, the heat seeping into my skin, thawing the chill from the rain. Built solid, like the river. Bends but doesn't break. Our talks turned there, intimate in the firelight, words slipping easier now that the dark pressed close. She spoke of drives through endless plains, the way headlights carved tunnels in the night. I shared fragments of my pages, women adrift, hands reaching for anchors that slipped away. Her gaze held mine longer each time, the air thickening with unsaid pulls. Hands lingered near, mine resting on the rug's edge, hers inches away, fingers twitching as if drawn by the same current. The proximity built slow, flames reflecting in her eyes. She leaned in once, shoulder brushing mine, solid warmth through the fabric. My breath hitched, heart thudding low. The storm outside faded, world narrowing to this glow, her scent of rain and wood smoke mingling with the pine crackling. I felt the tribe building, that urge to close the gap, to name the spark flickering between us. But she held back, always a fraction. Talk turned to her past then, guarded. Road life's free, but it drags things from before. Her eyes went distant, staring into the fire like it held answers. Pressures. Family expecting one path, crowds pulling another. Had to wander to breathe. No names, no places, just illusions, heavy with what she left unsaid. Her voice cracked once, fingers curling into fists on her lap. I saw the weight there, the way it shadowed her easy laugh, turning it brittle. I waited, the silence stretching too quiet, too full. The fire's heat pressed in, mirroring the ache rising in me. "Clara," I said, voice low, testing. "Out here it's just us. No crowds, no expectations. But the quiet, it amplifies everything." I paused, heart slamming against ribs, the words tumbling out. I've been lonely so long it became habit, hiding who I am, what I want. Women, real connections, kept them buried, fearing the fallout. With you, though, it feels different. Like maybe I'm not alone in that. The air stilled, flames the only movement. Her eyes met mine, wide, unguarded for a beat. Hope flared, mutual, raw. But then she blinked, looked away, poking at the fire with the iron. Sparks scattered. "Loneliness hits everyone on the road," she murmured, voice flat. "Changes nothing, though. Better not to dig too deep." The subject shifted quick, to the storm's path, how it might flood the banks come morning. My chest tightened, unspoken fear slamming home. Another wall, another pullback. Had I pushed too far again? The intimacy shattered, leaving embers of what might have been. We sat longer, the fire dying slow, but the ease cracked. She joked then, dry humor cutting the weight. "Bet you didn't expect a storm-tossed musician cluttering your hearth. Thought I'd be the quiet type, not the one turning your nights into symphony hall." I laughed, short and real, the sound easing some tension. "Mismatched, yeah. I figured writer solitude meant no encores." Her grin flashed, self-deprecating, eyes crinkling at the corners. "Encores are overrated. Stick to the opening act." Moments like that built empathy, bridges over the fails, her humor mirroring my own guarded edges, acknowledging the awkward dance without naming it. We weren't so different, fumbling in the dark, expectations clashing with quiet wants. The storm eased by midnight, rain tapering to a drizzle. Clara stood, stretching, the lantern swinging in her hand. "Thanks for the shelter. Won't flood the cottage now." I walked her to the door, the night air cool against my face, river still rumbling below. She paused on the porch, turning back. "Night, Lena. Sleep solid." I watched her silhouette fade down the path, door clicking shut behind her. Inside, the house felt larger, fire reduced to coals glowing faint. I banked it, embers hissing, then climbed to bed. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with firelight and distant eyes. Morning broke gray, mist hanging low over the silt banks. I rose early, coffee brewing strong, the routine pulling me through. Chores waited, checking the well, clearing debris from the yard, mud thick underfoot. Clara emerged mid-morning, flannel fresh, heading to the river with her guitar. We nodded, words sparse, the fail from last night lingering like damp earth. Afternoon brought me to the main house, sorting papers on the table. A draft I'd lent her weeks back lay forgotten by the window, pages curled from humidity. Tucked beneath, something slipped out. A small notebook, leather-bound, edges worn soft. Not mine. Clara's, left behind in the storm's rush. Heart thudding, I hesitated, fingers hovering. Wrong to look. But the pull won, curiosity sharp as the night's regrets. I opened it slow. Pages filled with scrawled lyrics, ink smudged like hurried thoughts. Songs of hidden glances, touches stolen in shadows. Loving women under covers of night. Words raw, aching. Her eyes said what lips couldn't, in a world that demanded silence. Deeper truths hinted there. her guarded reveals fleshed out in verse. Wanderings to escape judgments, a life split between stage lights and secret hearts. My breath caught, the notebook heavy in my hands, mirroring yearnings I'd buried in my own stories. This changed things, cracked open the walls she'd built. But what now? The discovery burned, a quiet fire starting anew. I closed the notebook with care, its leather warm against my palm, like it held a pulse. The words inside lingered, lyrics twisting through my thoughts as I set it aside. They mirrored my own hidden yearnings, women glimpsed in quiet corners, loves kept silent under the weight of eyes that judged. I'd written similar in my drafts, burying them deep, afraid they'd surface and shatter the piece I'd scraped together out here. Clara's pages felt like echoes, her pen scratching truths I'd only dared whisper to the river. The afternoon dragged, sun slanting low through the windows, casting long shadows across the table. I paced the cabin, the floorboards creaking under my steps, heart thudding steady against my ribs. Return it, confront, or let it lie, pretend the storm had washed away the glimpse. But the pull gnawed, insistent as the current below. By evening, I slipped the notebook into my pocket, the weight pressing against my hip like a secret demanding air. Dusk settled soft, mist rising off the silt banks, the river murmuring low. I found her by the water's edge, guitar in her lap, fingers plucking idle notes that faded into the chill. She looked up as I approached, surprise flickering in her eyes, then caution settling back. "Lena, everything all right?" I sat beside her on the damp grass, the silt stirring under my feet as I shifted, cool grains sifting through my fingers. The air hung thick with river dampness, that earthy scent clinging to us both. "Found this." I pulled the notebook free, holding it out, my voice steady despite the thud in my chest. "Left in the house after the storm." Her face paled, hand freezing mid-strum. She took it slow, like it might burn, flipping it open to confirm. Silence stretched, the water lapping at the banks, echoing the tension coiling between us. "You read it?" Quiet, not accusing, just raw. I nodded, gaze on the river, silt swirling lazy in the current. Couldn't help it. The words, they hit close. Like my own stories, the parts I hide. She closed the notebook, fingers tight around the edges, knuckles whitening. Her breath came uneven, the guitar set aside with a soft thud on the grass. "It's nothing, just scraps. Things from the road." But her voice broke there, cracking like thin ice underfoot. I turned to her, the mist curling around our legs, cool against my skin. "Clara, it's more. The wandering, to escape judgments, loving in shadows, keeping it buried. I know that ache. Felt it in the city, every stolen glance. Every night alone, wondering if it was safe to want more." She looked away, eyes distant on the water, but her shoulders slumped, the guard slipping. "Yeah, judgments. Grew up in a town where different meant whispers, then shouts. Family pushed the straight path, marry, settle, pretend. But I couldn't. Loved women instead. Quiet at first, then louder in songs no one heard the truth in. Wandered to breathe, to play without the weight. But it follows, always. Hiding who I am, even out here." Her voice broke again, words tumbling soft, vulnerable, the river carrying them away. Tears glistened in her eyes, unspoken fears surfacing like silt stirred from the bottom. I reached out, hand covering hers on the grass, calluses rough under my palm, warm despite the chill. She didn't pull away this time. Our gazes met, held, hers wide, searching, mine steady with the same pull I'd felt since that first guitar note. The realization hit then, mutual and sharp. This wasn't misread signals, not fleeting kindness. The connection ran deep, too real to deny. A current pulling us both under. My walls cracked in that shared look, fractures spreading quick through the guarded layers I'd built. Warmth bloomed inside, spreading slow like sunlight hitting the water, turning the murky surface to gold. It wasn't fear anymore, but relief. Her hand squeezing mine back, the mist wrapping us closer. For the first time, the isolation felt shared, not solitary. The river's rush a backdrop to this quiet truth. We sat there as night deepened, the sky bruising purple overhead, stars pricking through the haze. Words came hushed then, confessions surfacing one by one. Past loves lost to silence, the ache of concealment in small towns and big stages. Her voice steadied with each shared breath, mine too. The notebook forgotten between us, its pages no longer a barrier, but a bridge. The confessions flowed then, hushed against the river's murmur. Clara's hand stayed in mine, fingers interlacing slow, like roots finding soil. "Loving women," she said, voice barely above the water's lap. It was always in silence. Back home, I'd sneak notes under doors, meet in the dark corners of fields where no one looked. Past concealments built walls thicker than these banks. I'd smile for family photos, play songs that hid the ache. Pretend the pull toward her, toward them, was just a phase. But it wasn't. It carved me hollow, wandering to fill the gaps. Her words hung, raw as the silt exposed by low tide. I squeezed her hand, calluses pressing into my palm, grounding. The mist clung to our skin, cool beads tracing down my neck. "I know that silence," I replied, my voice steadying with the shared weight. Guarded my path the same way. City nights, I'd watch women from afar, laughs in cafes, hands brushing accidental. But mine stayed buried, loves quick and quiet, doors locked against the world. Feared the loss more than the loneliness. Out here, I thought I'd escaped it. Then you arrived, stirring it all up again. Relief washed through me, warm as the first sunlight breaking fog. Our hands clasped tighter, no pulling back, just this solid hold against the night's chill. We rose together, the grass damp underfoot, and walked back to the main house, steps synced without trying. Inside, the fire from earlier had died to embers, but I added logs, flames leaping quick, casting gold across the room. Clara stood close, her flannel brushing my arm, the world narrowing to this shared space, the hearth's glow, the scent of pine smoke curling up. She turned to me then, eyes reflecting the fire, soft and unguarded. I stepped in, arms wrapping around her waist, her body fitting against mine like it had always known the shape. The embrace came natural, her chin resting on my shoulder, breath warm against my neck. Heat built between us, not just the fires, but something deeper, thawing the years of frozen wants. Her hands slid up my back, fingers threading into my hair, pulling me closer. Lips met, tentative at first, then sure. Soft, tasting of river mist and unspoken truths. The kiss deepened, world fading to the crackle of logs, our heartbeats thudding in rhythm. We broke apart slow, foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the warm air. "This," Clara whispered, her voice breaking soft. "Feels like coming home." I nodded, the empowerment surging then. A choice to stay authentic, no more shadows or concealments. Together against the old fears, the judgments that had chased us both. We'd face them side by side, her songs weaving with my stories, truths no longer buried, but voiced in this quiet strength. The river outside rushed on, but here, in her arms, the current felt steady, carrying us forward. We lingered by the fire that night, bodies entwined on the rug, words sparse now, replaced by touches, fingers tracing collarbones, palms pressing flat against ribs to feel the rise and fall. Sleep came in fits, her head on my chest, the steady thrum of her pulse lulling me. Dawn crept in slow, light filtering through the cottage, painting the cottage in soft gold. I watched her wake, eyes fluttering open to meet mine, a smile curving her lips without words. The bond solidified there, in that quiet strength. No grand declarations, just this intertwined peace. Fears dissolved like mist under sun. The morning unfolded gentle, coffee brewing as we moved around the kitchen, shoulders bumping playful now, laughs cutting the air easy. Outside, the river gleamed, silt settled, banks firm. We stepped onto the porch together, her hand in mine, the world feeling larger, yet safer. Lingering peace wrapped around us, a reflection inviting you to remember your own hidden pulls, the moments when truth cracked open and let the light in. The door to the cottage stays open now, light spilling across the porch where our hands first brushed. Futures intertwined in this simple truth. No more hiding, just us, building stories and songs side by side. The river carrying our shared rhythm forward. The silt banks hold steady under dawn's glow, mist lifting slow as we step out together, her flannel sleeve against my arm, warm and real. I feel the weight lift, that guarded ache dissolving into quiet strength, her laugh cutting the morning chill like it always did. We've chosen this, authenticity over shadows, love voiced in the open air, no judgments to wander from. Her notebook rests on the table inside, pages no longer secret, but ours. Lyrics weaving with my words into something whole. You know this pull, don't you? The way truth cracks open hidden longings, letting connection flood in like sunlight on water. If it feels familiar, subscribe for more stories that uncover those hidden connections. The ones that validate what you've carried in silence. Share your moment in the comments. What changed when you let truth in?